Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my blog, where I highlight my creative journey and share the various obstacles that I come across, as well as the victories, and highlight the things that I'm applying to overcome those obstacles, whether learning it in the moment or things that I've picked up in the past. So, as far as last week is concerned, overall a big week, and mainly because last week was the first time that my feature film Idol was available to watch. Now, it was part of a film festival, and as is 2020, it was an online film festival. I don't know any film festival that isn't online at the moment. I could be wrong. I'm just saying based on the observation that I have. And so while it would have been great to really be in a theater with people, seeing their interactions and so forth, the year is what it is, and in a sense, I'm glad that the people got a chance to see the movie. And part of the people, one half, if you will, was the cast and crew. We never got to, we were planning a premiere party just a week or two before the quarantine hit, and we never could have that premiere party and celebrate the victory that was the movie, which it is what it is in that sense. And as much as I would have loved to have that, this was the first chance for the actors and the crew to see the movie in its completion, and also the fans, people that I know personally, as well as people that just kind of randomly stumbled onto it, through the festival or other means. And, in that sense, it was great to get the feedback from the cast and crew. I think they sent me some wonderful texts, but also, not to diminish them, it was great to also get the perspective of just audiences. And that was a very humbling thing because, they don't necessarily have a connection to the movie. They don't have to look at it a certain way. They don't look, there's not that, call it like rose-colored glasses or something like that. They see it, for the first time with no bias, for lack of a better term. And so to get responses, whether through social media or in the comment sections about it, or through emails, it was wonderful to see that people did enjoy the movie. It was great, and I'm glad that they did. It was, like I said, it was a humbling thing. Never do I do anything for the adulation side of it, nor do I think we as creatives should. But nonetheless, it's great when people do love our work. Why wouldn't it be? I appreciate it. I'm grateful for it. I don't put it up necessarily on a pedestal in that sense, but it's great to hear. Kind of a quick side note. One of the things that Ryan Holiday talks a lot about is this idea of always starting your next project, before your past project is out. Because a lot of times, whether it's a book, a movie, a song release, whatever, there's a gap of time where you've completed the song, you've done everything artistically that you wanted to in its final form before it actually comes out. And so that gap of time, utilize it to do something else, so that way you're not putting your mental eggs in one basket of like, okay, this needs to hit for me. Like you're on to the next. And that doesn't mean when the past project comes out that you shouldn't celebrate it. I think that's the thing that a lot of creatives, we don't really stop and take the time to appreciate the things that we've done. And it could be a short poem, it could be a drawing, whatever else is, whatever kind of thing you create, appreciate that you've created it. I think we need a little bit more recognition of ourselves. And so, to that effect, I am very grateful and humbled by what people said about the movie. And, it's great, but not, and I think part of why it made it so special was because it was, I don't want you, let's say unexpected, right? And maybe it wasn't purely unexpected in full regard, but I wasn't like anticipating, I wasn't looking at my phone for like, oh, when am I going to get an email? When am I going to get a text or whatever else, right? I've long since learned in doing kind of even just these lessons and these videos that, you do your best with whatever you're working on and you put it out there. But if you in your heart of hearts, if you think, oh, this is definitely going to hit, it never works out the way you think it does. There's been plenty, like even on social media, this is a microcosm of it. I think like, oh, I put together a great quote or something really inspirational, and it's been meaningful to me, and of course it's going to touch other people, and it doesn't. It doesn't devalue it, but it doesn't hit the same way as something else that is more silly to me or something like that, and I don't give it much thought. I'm very cognizant of it and want it to resonate, but don't give it the same sort of full effort and something like that. I post it and boom, all of a sudden that's the thing that's people are connecting with. So it's just that thing, you just never know ultimately. And so it's nice when people connect with something, but you gotta keep working at doing the things that you want to do. So as of right now, the movie is not available to watch. It was available for a week. So I appreciate you if you did take the opportunity to watch it. If you haven't, that's okay. It's not a one and done deal. There will be more opportunities to watch it. When? I don't know. That's not me withholding information. That's simply, we've submitted to multiple festivals. And, who knows, that some of them might even get pushed back. We're waiting on when those happen and things of that nature. So we'll see when it becomes available. And how they're gonna even screen it and so forth. So I'll keep you updated. For all the various updates, you can go to philsvitek.com/idol. That's IDYLL. It's also in the description box for your ease. But I promise, eventually I'll put it out on some sort of streaming platform for anyone to watch. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, can't give a timeline. Could be a year, could be 2 years. I don't know, unfortunately. The other kind of big thing that happened last week is I had an interview with a USC professor in the digital and interactive arts section of the learning curriculum, and his name is Sam Roberts, not to be confused with a friend of mine named Sam Roberts, who is a SiriusXM broadcaster. Small world, I guess. Nevertheless, USC professor Sam Roberts, I had reached out to him because I'm working on a sci-fi script dealing with virtual reality and artificial intelligence, and it's using that stuff as a basis to ask deeper, more meaningful questions about art. The title of the script is In Search of Sunrise, but nevertheless, I wanted to really be able to ground the movie as much as I can. So I wanted to have this information about quantum computing and artificial intelligence and virtual realities, and then kind of in a theoretical sense, push it as far as I could. What would that look like? And I've done research at this point about, all these topics, but whether it be books, podcasts, videos, and so forth, you can only kind of take it so far, right? Because, the books don't, they choose a topic that they want to talk about, meaning some of your more specific questions aren't going to always be there, right? And so you have to really do a lot of digging, and certainly, it can be quite, the research part of any sort of project can be quite exhausting, and I mean that both time-wise, because you have to, do a lot of research, but it also, mentally and physically sometimes. And so as part of the trick, I don't know why, I never had to do this before, because most of the stuff that I have worked on creatively are more like everyday type of experiences. And so I can draw from my friends, I can draw from myself. And so this being a kind of a sci-fi concept, I found him out, reached out, and we scheduled, a time to meet. And so we Zoomed for 45 minutes last Friday, and it was wonderful. Now, I recorded the conversation via Zoom. I had asked him, hey, do you mind if I record this? And, the deal was like, of course, not a problem, because my thought was I wanted to focus on the interview. I didn't want to spend time writing notes and missing something. And so by having it on video, I could always replay it and, take notes that way. But as part of it, the notion was that it would be a private thing for me. I wouldn't put it out there. But man, like, just really fascinating guy, really, really smart. And there was a whole number of things that we had kind of gone down towards. A couple of the big takeaways from it was this idea that, in computing, I'll use computing kind of synonymous with coding. There's just an inherent bias. It's like whoever codes the program, whatever their blind spots are, they're going to kind of be woven in. And even when you collect large sets of data, just based on the data that you collect, it's like, okay, well, that's what's, if you're not aware, like it's very difficult to create a truly unbiased piece of code. Because, even when you collect data from various parts, just the methodology of that data collection and the people you collect it from influences the coding of it. So this was kind of very, very interesting. And through the perspective of what I'm trying to achieve or, talk about in the script that I'm writing, it's this, part of what we want to explore is like that fine line between artistic vision and, true, like, computer unbiased, experiential forms. And it's like, if Black Lives Matter tomorrow decided let's create a virtual reality program where people can step into it and experience what the Black experience is in America, that certainly is different than, because you're aware of the artifice, you're aware of the intent. There's an artistic point to it. Chloe, those are my dogs agreeing with me or disagreeing with me. And so in that sort of experience, you're aware and you give it that artistic leeway. Whereas if you almost present it as, just kind of fact of the matter, you're unaware of those biases, but they're going to be there, and so you can't have that. Not that you can't have that, but meaning that, whether the coders or certainly the people, they're unaware, and if these things go unchecked, there could be consequences to that. So, this is just kind of microcosm. I'm still, truthfully, like, processing all the information that he said. Like, we talked for 45 minutes. He probably did 43 minutes worth of the talking. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that in the sense of how brilliant he was and how much he shared with me. So I'm really grateful to him. And it was, like I said, it was great to have those specific points of question, specificity, and I think, ultimately they're enriching the script that I'm writing, because, these were things he answered, details about certain plot holes and motivation that I was unaware of, and it would have been probably without him. So I'm very grateful. The other big kind of victory, it's more of a technical victory, like a skill set victory versus like a creative victory, but nonetheless, really, really kind of revolutionary in this sense. I had found a way to remove filler words from audio podcasts fast. So meaning in my professional life, the job that pays my rent and so forth, I edit podcasts, right, for Cadence 13, and in large part, a lot of what I do is, the big podcasts that are out there, the most successful ones, the ones that get hundreds of thousands plus downloads, are cleaned up for likes, knows. And this is because it sounds less professional to have them in there, and certainly it detracts from the message. So let me give you an example. I could have a 45-minute episode, and even if just a simple cleanup, like if someone doesn't have a lot of ums and things like that, stutters and so forth, you can still clean out a good 5 minutes out of an episode just by doing that. And the goal isn't necessarily to shorten the episodes, but the more succinct a message is, the more it will resonate. It's almost like, to me, no different than speed reading a book versus reading a book slow. You actually retain, you would maybe think that reading a book slower, you would retain everything because you're spending so much time really comprehending, but in fact, it's quite the opposite. If you actually speed read, you will retain a lot more of that information. And so I kind of think it along those lines. And so, but that side of it, removing filler words, is tedious of a task, and it's certainly a time-consuming task, especially when there's a lot of them. And so I road tested an episode that had over 3,000 filler words, and this is something that before this, people would have to, like myself, would have to take out. Now I ran it through this process that I discovered and thought of, and within 5 minutes, I was able to remove all of them. So this is really, truly amazing, because this is something that I've been thinking about for the longest time. Of I'm always one, there's got to be an easier way to do this, right? And there's got to be a way to automate it and so forth. And I'm a big fan of that. And so through a combination of asking the right questions, through a combination of the right technology in certain parts, I finally honed in on something, and I was like, okay, if I combine this with this and this, then perhaps this is possible. And so, that's how I found this. And it works wonderfully. Now, I still have to do various road tests of it. And certainly, it's something that I think is so game changing that and new that I'm not quite kind of ready to share on the exact specifics. But if you are interested in this and having filler words removed from your podcast, well, I'm offering to do it for very cheap through Fiverr. I've included a link for you down below. So if this is something that would save you a lot of time, by all means, look for me through there, and I'd be happy to do it for you. And then the other thing that I've also been doing is I've been doing teaching. So, I have a friend that really wants to learn editing, and he's been asking me for a long time. And, I said, okay, let's do it. Let's finally do it. Sure, there's other stuff going on in my life, but it kind of gets me oddly in a way to be social because, we're spending hours at a time, learning and interacting. And so I've been doing that, and it's kind of interesting, in that sense, this is someone who's literally starting from scratch, ground zero as far as, all learning, and whether it be sample rates and, keyframes, all this sort of terminology that goes into editing, he is learning just ground zero. And so in that sense, it's a good exercise for me to really work to explain something very simply for someone who obviously who doesn't know that. And the fact that I think we're making progress, and he's retaining this stuff, I get excited about because it means I'm teaching it correctly. The last sort of thing that I'll touch upon is last week I made this decision that I'm going to focus on completing the projects that are open-ended before I move on to new stuff. So one of the biggest projects that for me is my novel. And I have like 10 notes left to address. Now they're not simple notes where, you just change up a couple sentences. They're kind of like a domino effect where, if you change one thing here, it changes the motive and you got to make sure it tracks throughout the rest of the novel. But by hell or high water, I'm committed to, doing this. And so before I move on to new stuff, because then I can have a clear head into the new projects and be finally done with this. And in fact, I was querying the book, before this because it was pretty much done. And when you query a book, they only ask generally for the first 5 pages, the 10 pages, or the first 3 chapters, which for me are about 15 pages. And so from that regard, I was like, okay, the first 3 chapters completed, they don't have these notes, so they're fine. But even then, I was like, you know what? Let me just, rather than spend time and energy querying the book, let me just get it done completely so it's not taking up mental space anymore in my brain. And then I can query all I want, and I can work on the script that I've been wanting to work on, that I talked about with, the interview I had with Sam Roberts. That's what that was for. And whatever else, right? So I'm kind of thinking about in those terms. So I'm gonna work on the novel, then I'm gonna finalize a couple of things with the movie as far as like I'm gonna put out a trailer and just be kind of just done with all of that so I can move on to new creative stuff. Because it's one of those things, you can work on multiple projects, and I'm certainly, capable of doing that, and as I'm sure at times you do that and certainly are capable of it. But at a certain point, in this sense, I feel like it's becoming detrimental because I've got too many open-ended things, and sometimes it's just good to close those various loops. So that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, that's what I have for you creatively. That's, the things that I've been thinking about doing. From the other perspective, obviously, there's a lot of things happening in the world, and, I'm continuing to educate myself, trying to stay as informed as I can. Luckily I have friends. We constantly share and talk about our experiences, and so that's helpful. Hopefully you have someone in your life that you're able to really be open with in these 2020 trying times, if you will. But yeah, sometimes too, it's okay to take a week off or more. Life in general is a marathon, not a sprint, and so it does you no service to burn yourself out. So if you need the time to kind of just rest and relax, there's nothing creative you have to do. There's nothing, just kind of relax if that's beneficial. So, excuse me. Only you can know that answer. Anyway, that's what I have for you. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. I appreciate you. As always, if you have questions or thoughts of your own, by all means ask. If there's specific things you want me to touch upon in individual lessons, let me know. Happy to do that for you. Thank you, and I'll see you